Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my shelf tours. This is Shelf Tour 31. It is my Arthur Conan Doyle / Sherlock Holmes shelf. It's just a mishmash of a few things, and there's a few things that I've taken it off and was doing some bits of reading, and I can't find them now. I think I've piled them into other piles waiting to be reshelved or with new books. So we'll have to forego those. And there was a couple biographies, and there was a interesting one about Arthur Conan Doyle's relationship with the Strand magazine, and it sort of has always sort of flipped between my books about books and periodicals and Conan Doyle here, but it actually should reside with Conan Doyle, but it's sort of gone missing at the moment. It's probably at the bottom of a pile which I can't access at the moment. But let's get to it here. Here's an interesting book. It is basically, well, yeah, as it says, Sherlock Holmes in London, a photographic record of Conan Doyle's stories by Charles Vinnie. It's a larger book. It's a bit rough, but it's got some wonderful photographs and captions in it of basically London of the time of Sherlock Holmes. It's, if anybody's interested in it, I'm sure it can be easily found. Since I bought this, I've seen many copies of it in charity shops in the bookshop that I go to. So I think it was quite popular. So, and cheap. I paid probably £2 for it. There we go. There's Jeremy Brett. And the frontispiece, and as I say, it's Charles Vinnie, and it's published by don't recognize the publishing. Equation is an imprint of Thorson Publishing Group Limited. This is 1989, and it's got each section has got photos from that would fit for the Study in Scarlet, The Sign of Four, Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, Hound of the Baskervilles, His Last Bow, and The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes, and an atlas of Victorian London, and then all the acknowledgements for the photos. So that's quite nice. Now, I no longer have sort of the multiple copies of sort of Sherlock Holmes stories as I used to. And I don't have the new annotated Sherlock Holmes. There's 3 volumes that have been put out. I used to have the 2-volume green set, the old one, but I'm still on the lookout for them, but if I can find them. But this is my go-to reading copy of the Sherlock Holmes short stories. It's all the short stories, the 5 volumes in one. The complete memoirs, Return of the Last Bow, and this Casebook. Now, I do, when I say that, I do have some other little additions that I should bring here. Yeah, it's just the shelf is pretty full at the moment. But when I find them, I'll bring them here. And I also have that folio set of the novels. I think it's the novels or short stories. Short stories, I think I have, which will probably wind up staying in the folio collection there. But even so, this is a nice little omnibus edition. It's a reprint. It was done by John Murray, and you can see it's been reprinted to death. 1971. I wanted to really get an earlier version that was cloth. This is paper bound. And it's got a facsimile of his signature on the front. But it is still sewn. It opens up nicely, nice and flat. It's actually a very good reading copy. And I go back to it all the time. And I wouldn't be without it, really. There is a companion one for the novels, but the one I had, I got rid of it because it was just poor. It was as if the printing by that time, lines were just sort of faded out. It was very, very poorly printed. So I don't know if they were all like that, but yeah, it was impossible to read, to be honest. Here's an interesting little one. It's The Uncollected Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, compiled by Richard Lancelot Green. It's parodies, plays, poems, speeches, reminiscences now gathered together to make the perfect companion to the series, to stories. There's a lot more of this kind of stuff that I don't have, but I'm slowly collecting them. As I say, like, these things are not priorities in my collecting. It's just things when I see them, when they drop in my lap, I will buy them, and that's how I've sort of accumulated these. And when I mean these, I mean like the Bram Stoker, the Mary Shelley, and the Doyle. And then as we go on, there's a few times that I will search out something, if I find one thing and then I realize that, oh, I need that to go along with it, then I will search it out. But I generally don't search it out at this point, because if I do that with every sort of area, it becomes insane. There's too many things to get. But yeah, this is Penguin, first published in 1983, and this is a mass market from 1988. And here's two little things somebody gave me for Christmas one year. Oh, that's actually not. That's a poems book. This is the Sherlock Holmes, the Essential Mysteries in One Sitting. It's a little tiny little book. Jennifer Claus's running press. It's got The Life of Sherlock Holmes, Essential Characters, Study in Scarlet, and The Sign of Four, but it's not definitely complete. It's just a little book, so that stays there though. And this is really the only pastiche one that I have, I think, at the moment. I've read several. It's not something that I've gone on my way to collect, and this sort of showed up in my bookshop, and I thought, yeah, I read this, I don't know, 30 years ago or so. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a 7% solution, being a reprint from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, M.D., and edited by Nicholas Meyer. Well, it's written by Nicholas Meyer. It's Hodder and Stoughton. 1975. So it is a first printing. It's price clipped, but it's in good shape. I think he wanted the bookseller wanted originally £8 for it, and I think this was the day that I was able to get stuff half price. So for £4, I could not say no to it. Now we get into a collection of his letters, and as I say, I have a couple bios, but I don't know. They've got moved for whatever reason, and I was looking at them, and I never put them back. But anyway, here is a collection of his letters. It's quite hefty. It's over 600 pages. Published by Harper Press. Edited by John Lellenberg, Daniel Stashower, and Charles Foley. In 2007. Harper Brothers, Harper Press. So yeah, collection of his letters, and then we'll get into also non Sherlock Holmes material as well, because this is sort of a Doyle shelf. What's this one here? Sherlock Holmes Letters Without a Jacket, edited by Richard Lancelot Green. These are, I think they're sort of reviews and letters to Doyle or to Sherlock Holmes written that have been collected together. And this is 1986, and Secker and Warburg, London. As I say, it's without a dust jacket, so got that really cheap at one point. It's a standard Doyle Company, Christopher Morley on Sherlock Holmes, edited with an introduction by Stephen Rotham. It's sun faded on the spine. Fordham University Press. Yeah, it's just collections, introductions on of all to deal with Sherlock Holmes, the Anglo-American cult of Sherlock Holmes, and its organizational centerpiece, the Baker Street Irregulars in New York, were products of the fertile mind of Christopher Morley, one of the most versatile and prolific writers of the first half of the 20th century, novelist, essayist, columnist, founding judge of the Book of the Month Club, poet, and panelist. Morley was an avid exponent of the literature he loved. Few writers were closer to his heart than Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote his 60 tales of Sherlock Holmes and Watson during most of Morley's early years. The Standard Doyle Company, Morrow's punning corporate title for the Irregulars, is an anthology of Morley's styles. Besides old favorites like the memorial Sherlock Holmes, doubtless to the most widely read Sherlockonian essay of them all, here are previously unpublished and uncollected essays, poems, short stories, and even a play. Excerpts from Morley's columns in the Saturday Review of Literature and the Baker Street Journal cover every aspect of Holmes's world, from dressing gowns to Turkish baths, from beekeeping to the bee in 221 B Baker Street. This is an historical and intellectually important book for Sherlockians, an advanced syllabus for the lover of Sherlockian literature and lore. So that's quite interesting. And I haven't read it cover to cover. I've only read little bits and pieces, a few of the essays. Sherlock Holmes Commentary by D. Martin Dakin. This is by David and Charles. David and Charles have put out, I think, 3 books on Sherlock Holmes, and I want to get the others. Do they list them here? Yeah, the London... oh, actually, 4 they put out, yeah. The London of Sherlock Holmes. No, that's different than that one. In the Footsteps of Sherlock Holmes. And Sherlock Holmes Detected, all by David and Charles. This one's by D. Martin Dakin, and it's a commentary on the Sherlock Holmes, every story, and published in 1972 and reprinted in 1974 by David and Charles. Okay, yeah, this is just another, they're voluminous. There's many of these type of things. My Dear Holmes, A Study in Sherlock, David Brend, George Allen and Unwin. This is originally published in 51, this second impression 51 as well. And it's just a sort of homage to Sherlock Holmes, and talking about the stories, and little bits and pieces, publishing, and just the background, little bits and pieces. Like there are, as I say, there's a whole library of this kind of material. This is The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes by Vincent Starlett. It's a new edition of The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes is certain to be greeted with joy as Sherlockians everywhere hailed as the standard life of the famous sleuth. Mr. Starrett's book has long enjoyed immense popularity for many years, as being available only in collector's items. It's published by George Allen and Unwin, revised and enlarged edition by Vincent Starrett, and this is 1960. The University of Chicago was originally, and this edition published in 1961. So, Holmes and Watson, Miscellany. Just little bits and pieces, again, like that other one where there's so many little people have written about Sherlock Holmes, but this was owned again by that Hodgkin, who in Cambridge, he was a Don, but he was also a scholar. His wife was a scholar on children's literature in England. And a brother, I'm got it around the corner here. It's Hodgkin's History of Anglo-Saxon England, 2 volumes, which was really big. So this belonged to them. This was part of their library that was bought by, or what was left of the library that was bought by the bookshop that I go to here. It's a bit rough around the edges. It's flaking at the tops. I need to get that sorted. It is Oxford University Press, 1953. And it's just Mr. S.C. Roberts has long been known for his scholarly interest in Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. His note on the Watson problem has been described as an incunabulum, and his Life of Dr. Watson as the standard biography. Recently, he contributed to an introduction of some length to the volume of Sherlock Holmes stories in the world's classics. These and other essays are now brought together in a singular volume for the benefit of a far-flung community of Holmesian enthusiasts. Another feature of the book is the inclusion of 2 unrecorded adventures, Christmas Eve and the strange case of Megalitherium thefts. These 2 pieces, previously printed for private distribution in very small editions, will be welcomed by all students of Apocrypha. Mr. Roberts is Master of Pembroke College, Cambridge, and a former Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge. As I say, it's very, very hot in this corner, and I think I meant to do a number of shelf tours. I think I was going to complete the whole thing, but I'll just finish up Doyle here, and we'll move, and I'll come back at a later day. Elementary, My Dear Watson, Sherlock Holmes Centenary, His Life and Times by Graham Noun. Just one of these sort of coffee table ones, but it's worth it for the illustrations, if anything else. This is Wardlock Limited, 1986, and I'll explain why. See, you got the poster for William Gillette. You've got other illustrations. It's full of this kind of stuff. So it's very useful for that, if nothing else. The text, I don't remember, was too bad. It was enlightening with regards to the illustrations, that's for sure. Sherlock Holmes, The Man and His Worlds by H.R.F. Keating. Again, similar to the previous one, but with lots of illustrations and photographs from periodicals and of London, of the area. This is Thames and Hudson, and 1979. And that looks interesting. Dining with Sherlock Holmes, a Baker Street cookbook, Julia Rosenblatt and Frederick Schonneschmidt. But looks like it's by Thames and Hudson as well. I've never heard of that one. I just see it now on the back flap. But yeah, no, and there's a picture of sort of what would his study be and so forth. Yeah, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Interviews and Recollections. This is edited by Harold Orrell, by Macmillan. 1991, and it's literally those who knew Sir Arthur Conan Doyle liked him. What emerges most clearly from this anthology of more than 50 selections is that the gusto for personality matched the liveliness of his writing style. The selections by writers such as Bram Stoker, Jerome K. Jerome, J.M. Barrie include 15 interviews by journalists. They summarize the life and accomplishments of a great Victorian who will always be remembered, the creator of the greatest detective of them all. So yeah. Letters to the Press. by Arthur Conan Doyle. It's compiled and introduced by John Michael Gibson and Richard Lancelot Green. It's the unknown Doyle, and it's letters. These have to do, I think. Let me see if I can remember right here. Yeah, it's just various letters that he wrote to journals and articles, mostly letters by the looks of it. I haven't had actually much time to look at this. I haven't picked it up really cheap. Sucker and Warburg, 1986. And as I was mentioning before, with regards to the Oxford University Press, their World Classics, they come out with some hardcover editions, and this is one. This is Gothic Tales by Arthur Conan Doyle. So this is all his Gothic Tales, edited introduction and notes by Darrell Jones, Oxford University Press, 2016, second impression, and I bought it fairly soon after, I think. Now this next one, I showed you the short stories. They continued on with the complete Professor Challenger stories. And 1, 2, 3, the 4 volumes of that. And it's price clipped, but very oddly price clipped. Looks like they had probably prices all for different countries on this. The Lost World, The Poison Belt, The Land of Mist, The Disintegration Machine, and When the World Screamed. John Murray. Subsequent printing, 52 originally, this is 1963. And yeah, so there's other ones that are along with this. There's the short stories, there's the just saying Conan Doyle stories, the long stories, which I mentioned already, historical romances, the complete Challenger, and then the Napoleonic stories done the same way. This is, yeah, I'm not too familiar with this one. I thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd buy it. Somebody's put on a, it's really weird, they glued on the, looks like it's been repaired, but no matter. It is the Stark Munro Letters, being a series of 16 letters written by J. Stark Munro, M.B., to his friend and former fellow student Herbert Swanborough of Lowell, Massachusetts, during the years 1888 to 1834, edited and arranged by Conan Doyle. I haven't actually looked into this to see. I think it's just a fiction of his that he's done in letters that he's created, as far as I know. But to be honest, I have not looked into this. It's 1909 Longman's Green. I have not in any way, because I know Doyle wrote a lot of material, and I'm not that familiar with all his material. I've really only read and reread the Sherlock Holmes material. Here you get a few other newer books of The Mile End Murder. It's subtitles are The Case Conan Doyle Couldn't Solve. And it's Murder of Mary Emsley was a let's start this again. The Murder of Mary Emsley was a veritable locked room mystery with an abundance of suspects. During the police investigation, there were several twists and dramatic discoveries, with suspicion falling in turn on disgruntled stepchildren concerned about their inheritance, a nephew of bad character who had been impatient for news of her death and the trusted employee who had been a police officer and spy until he was sent to prison for robbery. Eventually, the case led to a sensational public trial that was dominated by surprise revelations and shock witnesses, before climaxing with one of the final public executions at Newgate. But was an innocent man executed? Arthur Conan Doyle believed that was the case, but was never able to find the real killer. Now, in The Mile End Murder, best-selling author Sinclair McKay expertly retraces the police inquiry, exploring the science of detection, early forensic, and the shocking nature of crime reporting before finally revealing the true murderer who has escaped justice for 150 years. So it's Conan Doyle in sort of aspect, because it is something that he was delving into. So I picked it up as a remainder, really cheap, so it's on the shelf here. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, The Quest to Solve the Greatest Mystery of All Through a Looking Glass. This is his look into the supernatural. Stephen Betchell and Lawrence Roy Staines. St. Martin's Press. 2017. Is it possible to make direct contact with the dead? Do the departed seek to make contact with us? The conviction that both things were true was the cornerstone of spiritualism, a kind of do-it-yourself religion that swept the Western world from the 1850s to the 1930s. Prominent artists and poets, prime ministers, and scientists all joined hands around the seance table, but the movement was most famously spokesman by far was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, whose public quarrels with Houdini over the truth of spiritualism made headlines across the country. So that's what that's about. And here's the ultimate mystery, a real-life story behind the creation of Sherlock Holmes by Daniel Smith. Published in 2018 by Michael Mayer Books. It says here, Arthur Conan Doyle shocks his legions of fans by killing the world's favorite fictional detective. Sherlock Holmes, meanwhile, in Scotland, Sherlock Holmes, meanwhile, in Scotland, a sensational real-life murder trial is playing out. Alfred Monson, a scion of the aristocracy, is charged with killing a young army lieutenant, Cecil Hambogue, on the sprawling Adamant estate. The worlds of crime fiction and crime fact are about to collide spectacularly. Among the prosecution witnesses was Joseph Bell and Henry Littlejohn Bell, Doyle's tutor. So yeah, so it's about that. So it's all related. So that's it. As I say, there are a few extra pieces that are sort of missing off here, but as I say, just a couple biographies and that one on the Strand, which, as I say, could go anywhere. Could go in my books about books with regards to the periodicals periods of late 19th century. But I usually keep it here. But anyway, that's it for now. The next three shelves sort of blend into each other. It goes from ghosts to sort of spirituality, witchcraft, and then horror, just plain horror. A little bit of horror fiction that I have and about horror. But yeah, so it goes from ghosts to witchcraft to horror, and we'll get to that in the next few days. See you later, BookTube. Bye.